the remainder of this episode, I'm going to talk about two other whistleblowers for a moment. See, in the previous segment of this episode, I've talked about the Boy Scout Jamboree, where we prevented a terrorist attack that would have been carried out by our government to expand the police state, as they did in the case of the Boston bombing. Now, and that was carried out by the FBI. So, we've got these two whistleblowers. Look, a whistleblower should be able to go to a politician, get their story out, and then the government goes after the criminals, right? That's the way whistleblowing is supposed to work. It's the whistleblower says, oh, I've got this information. Who do I go to? Oh, I should be able to go to my elected officials who represent the people so that they can get the public informed about this scandal. But when Bradley Manning did that, he was called a traitor. Bradley Manning is going to be in jail for decades, probably, and he's a hero because he pointed out all the murders and the corruption in the wars in the Middle East by our own government. He provided that information to WikiLeaks, and one of the things that came out of that was that the drone strikes, right? So you've got drone strikes and the gunship footage of our soldiers killing civilians who are innocent. No judge, no jury, urban warfare at its worst, and they killed a couple Reuters reporters. They said their cameras were guns. That came from Bradley Manning's leak to WikiLeaks. Now, Edward Snowden is an NSA whistleblower. I'm sure he learned from that. And so he revealed all of the wiretapping and the surveillance, illegal surveillance of U.S. citizens by the National Security Agency, NSA, which they'd lied about. And then they had to come out and say, oh, we were lying. So he went into hiding. So he put out the information through the UK, through a United Kingdom reporter, not an American reporter. Who could he go to? He couldn't trust anybody in the government. And so what I want to reiterate to people in the government who are whistleblowers, and the last episode that we did here was with a whistleblower. On the TSA, you know, Jeffrey Black, the retired federal air marshal. So I want to reiterate to you that I will protect you with my life if you're a whistleblower, and the identity of the whistleblower in the case of the National Boy Scout Jamboree, that's never been disclosed. That person never had to come forward. They never faced any retaliation. They're safe and sound as far as I know to this day. And so that was a case of how it's supposed to work. See, now, if Edward Snowden had come to me, I would have been able to expose all the information without him ever having to be named. And so I want to reiterate that that's the way the political process is supposed to work for whistleblowers. And if you are a whistleblower, you can contact me anytime, and I will validate your information as far as I can, and I'll get it out so that we can get the media to actually go research it. So that's how it works, is I can provide the information, and then the media will go and do their homework on it. Now, another person that needs to be named is Michael Hastings. This is from Russia Today. Why are the Russians? Thumbs up to the Russians for their work in reporting on corruption. FBI sued for keeping secret their file on journalist Michael Hastings. So we've got these three whistleblower types. He's actually a reporter for the Rolling Stone who was murdered in a car bomb. And at the same time, he just happened to be investigating and doing a report on the NSA and the police state. So you've got these whistleblowers, and this story, this is from Russia Today. Snowden granted 1-year asylum in Russia, leaves airport. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, thumbs up to Russia for giving him asylum. See, the Russians are doing more for your freedom today than Obama in the White House. I just want you to know that. The question is, why is Obama persecuting whistleblowers? Why isn't he going after the criminals that the whistleblowers are exposing? Why is Russia having to protect our whistleblowers for us? Why is Russia's government doing more for American freedom than this Obama administration, than this Congress? Why? I want to know why. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden has been granted temporary asylum in Russia and is allowed to enter the country's territory. The whistleblower has been granted temporary political asylum in Russia. Edward Snowden's legal representative, Kushurena, said, with his words later confirmed by Russia's Federal Immigration Service. I have just handed over to him papers from the Russian Immigration Service. They are what he needs to leave the transit zone. Now, with his newly awarded legal status in Russia, he cannot be extradited or handed over to U.S. authorities, even if Washington files an official request. He can now be transported to the United States only if he agrees to go voluntarily. Good job, Moscow. Now, look at this. Listen to this. This is two investigative journalists are suing the FBI after the government failed to respond to a pair of Freedom of Information requests filed for the details of the death of reporter Michael Hastings. Reporters are being murdered by the government who are investigating the reports of whistleblowers. So, look, Edward Snowden is a hero. Michael Hastings is a hero. Bradley Manning is a hero. So you've got Edward Snowden being protected by Russia, and then you've got the Rolling Stone magazine reporter Michael Hastings, who was investigating the very thing that this man is blowing the whistle on, and he's murdered. Okay? So you've got to follow this. Jason Leopold and Ryan Shapiro filed a joint suit on Friday after the Federal Bureau of Investigation neglected to respond to their Freedom of Information requests, Act requests, within a 20-day working period required by law. So the FBI has files on their investigation of the death of this reporter because he was killed by a car bomb. His car didn't explode, and it may have been taken over by remote control and then blown up and then driven into a tree or whatever. But it makes no sense. Now, at the same time, Michael Hastings contacted WikiLeaks, and he let them know that he was being harassed or chased, let's see, by the FBI. According to a friend, Michael Hastings warned his colleagues over email just hours before his death that he was working on a big story and that the FBI would likely be investigating his associates. So he knows he's being investigated, so he's warning his friends. Quote, "It alarmed me very much," Staff Sergeant Joseph Biggs, a friend of Hastings, said of the email he received last month. I just said it doesn't seem like him. I don't know. I just had this gut feeling it really bothered me. So that's that. He's dead now. And the FBI won't talk about the files that they have on his death. Now this is another reason why we have to have people like Edward Snowden in the NSA whistleblowing. Now this is the a big kahuna. If you thought Bradley Manning was big, if you thought Edward Snowden was big, if you thought Michael Hastings was big, if you thought the National Boy Scout Jamboree was big, this is bigger. The two fake democracies threaten life on earth. Paul Craig Roberts. This is paulcraigroberts.org. And he's talking about something that came out of the YaleJournal.org. Amitai Edzoni has raised an important question. Who authorized preparations for war with China? That's the name of the article. Edzoni says that the war plan is not the sort of contingency plan that might be on hand for an improbable event. He reports that the Pentagon's war plan was not ordered by and has not been reviewed by U.S. civilian authorities, like me. See, I'm a civilian who would be an elected official. I would be what's considered a civilian authority. So you've got the Pentagon, the military, just doing whatever it wants. We are confronted with a neoconized U.S. military out of control, endangering Americans and the rest of the world. Edzoni is correct that this is a momentous decision made by neocon military. China is obviously aware that Washington is preparing for war with China. If the Yale Journal knows it, China knows it. If the Chinese government is realistic, the government is aware that Washington is planning a preemptive nuclear attack against China. Do you remember my last campaign when I told you that the Russians have moved missiles back into Cuba? And nobody was talking about that? We're talking about Cuban Missile Crisis 2. I talked about it in my last campaign. Nobody's covering that. So Russia's got missiles in Cuba right now. We're planning a nuclear attack against China and also Russia, if you go and read the whole article. And nobody's talking about it. No other kind of war makes sense from Washington's standpoint. The superpower that was never able to occupy Baghdad now wants to occupy China. This is Occupy Freedom. We'll be right back after this. Okay, so our government is planning a nuclear strike on China. Now listen to this. This is what Paul Craig Roberts says in closing. The American superpower was never able to occupy Baghdad, and after 11 years of war has been defeated in Afghanistan by a few thousand lightly armed Taliban. It would be curtains for Washington to get into a conventional war with China. When China was a primitive third world country, it fought the U.S. military to a stalemate in Korea. Today, China is the world's second largest economy, is rapidly overtaking the failing U.S. economy, destroyed by jobs offshoring, bankster fraud, and corporate and congressional treason. The Pentagon's war plan with China is called Air-Sea Battle. So you've got to go to paulcraigroberts.org and read this. The two fake democracies threaten life on earth. Okay? And it also talks about how we tried to start a war with Russia with nuclear weapons in Bush's administration. That was over in Georgia. We had Georgia strike at Russia. Russia smashed them. But then Russia didn't reoccupy Georgia. Russia isn't trying to be imperialist. China could occupy Taiwan. They're not. America's government is out of control. And we need to take control of it. We need to take control of the White House. And we need to stop these nutcases in the Pentagon. I'm David Lory VanDerBeek, the next governor of Nevada. This is Occupy Freedom. Take care, everyone.
Don't help to hide, don't help to lie. Either on my side or you're in my way. Either way is right, as in the look in your eye. Either on my side or you're in my way.